Hello, my name is Emil, and I'm one of the co-founders of Debricked. And today I'm here to present Open Source Select, a Debricked product that enables developers to search and find great and compliant open source to use within the walls of a company. This product is aimed at both developers and security, compliance, and OSPO people that want to control the intake process of open source in a company. So it is a searchable database where a developer can search for different projects and packages or do free text searches to find the right open source to use. Um, so let's start by trying some different searches. Let's say I'm looking for a web framework, um, and um, And if we look here, we are greeted with a couple of nice web frameworks, such as Poem in Rust or Laravel in Composer. But I'm mostly a Python developer, so I'd like to filter on the Python ecosystem, which is the PyPy package manager. And when I apply this filter, I'm only displayed these different packages that are available in that ecosystem. And here we can see that we get results that, for me as a Python developer, I know and I'm very familiar with, such as Flask, Pyramid, or Django. We are presented also with the latest stable version and that version's license, as well as some tags and the first indication of our different community health scores, so popularity, contributors, and the security score. When we click into Flask here, for instance, we are greeted with the description of the package here as well as that we have collected all the different relevant links here, such as link to the documentation, to PyPy, the package manager, the homepage, and of course the source code repository. One thing that is really impactful and unique with Debricked is that we have a quite comprehensive set of open source health metrics, where we have the contributor, the popularity, and security score. And those are meant to help developers make quick and easy analysis of open source projects to make sure that they fit their needs of the organization in terms of the activity and the general health of the open source community. A good and stable and healthy open source community will hopefully live for a long time and then can continue to develop this open source project, and we can tap into that future development in our projects as a company. And there are some aspects of open source health that's really important. Here we can see that in the contributor score, it has a quite decent score of 71. And we can see in this plot where we have the second layer of the metrics, where we have the practices. These practices are then summed up into the metric, but we have constructed different practices here to kind of try to answer the most important and most commonly asked questions when analyzing an open source project. For instance, is it an experienced community? Have they developed the project for a long time and are active in other projects in the open source community? And one of my favorite ones, is it a diverse community? Meaning that, do we have multiple people contributing to this open source project and it's not reliant on one single person building everything? So here we can see that for, in this instance with Flask, we can see that David ISM is the top contributor, and he has about 249 pull requests. That's quite a lot but we can also see that there are the top 5 contributors compared to the rest of the contributors, the about 700 other contributors to this project are very active as well and have contributed a lot. So meaning that the truck factor of this project is quite good. So if David and some others of the top contributors decided that it was time to quit contributing, it's very likely that other people would pick up the reins and keep maintaining this project. Um, and here we can also look at things such as the activity of the community and the activity of the core team, so the maintainers that can merge pull requests and have historically merged pull requests. How active are they? Under the hood, each practice consists of a set of features that are more simpler calculations. So this is an aggregation-based mathematical model that uses machine learning under the hood to make things as comparable as possible so you can easily compare different projects. And under each practice is a set of features then. A feature could, for instance, be the total amount of commits the past 6 months, or the number of stars, or the trend line of contributions. There are multiple different commits or features that we use under the hood. Then we can look at popularity as well. Flask is, of course, a very popular project, scoring 100 of 100 in the Flask community. But we can also look at things such as developer popularity. So how popular is it to interact with the project on GitHub, but not as a contributor? So we can see that the stars trend is pointing decently upwards, and this also takes into account the number of issues that external users create, as well as the interaction on issues and discussions and so on, to make sure that people are actively following this project. Then we also have a security metric where we look at different security aspects, and I will show you another example for that. And then we, of course, give you all the different versions that we have, and we also look at we also give you the README to kind of figure out a bit more of what the project actually does. Going into another project for looking at security, I think TensorFlow is a very good project to look at and demo. If we search up here, we can check out TensorFlow. And going down to the security metric, we can see that it doesn't score great, not terrible, but not great as well. There's actually a story here. So TensorFlow is the main machine learning neural network project produced by Google. It was made available almost 10 years ago at this point. And it started out as an internal project, and then they open sourced it. And what was not as great in the beginning was that they brought with them some internal practices that were not as good in an open source community. One of the main things they did is that they had very large pull requests in the project. So their coding best practice score is looking decent now. But if we look at the history here, we can see the pull request size in TensorFlow. And it was over 1,000 lines of code. And this is incredibly large pull requests for an open source project. And with large pull requests, you get worse code review, you get higher bug density, and the risk of vulnerabilities increases as well. And if we go and look at bug reporting, this practice here, we can see that it's quite bad, meaning that the bug saturation and how they work with bugs is not great. And we can see at some point of all 3,000 open issues on TensorFlow, 1.6 thousand were bug issues. That's not, were bug issues, and that's, it was a total of 4.6 thousand issues. So that's about, a 30% bug saturation. meaning that a lot of the communities tried to use it, and sometimes it worked out, but there was a lot of bugs. And you can largely attribute this to the coding practices they had in the beginning. And then you can see that sometime around 2018, and then there were some mishaps here, but then they reduced the pull request size and made smaller changes, which increases the code quality. Um, you can also look at vulnerabilities here, because TensorFlow has been plagued by a lot of vulnerabilities, and notably a lot of really critical ones. They have a bunch of 9.8, and so on vulnerabilities. And if you compare this to other projects such as PyTorch, they don't have the at all same underlying practices and the amount of vulnerabilities that TensorFlow has had. And this also indicates the importance of choosing good and healthy open source into your organization, because TensorFlow is now very much regarded as not the best alternative in terms of neural networks and machine learning projects. A lot of companies and the community has decided to go on and use PyTorch in most of the cases instead. And I myself, in my machine learning journey and building out machine learning for Debricked, we switched from TensorFlow to PyTorch some time ago as well. And this is only part of what you can do in Open Source Select. So it's not all about making good decisions and looking at data to choose what open source which is best to use within your organization, but you can actually work with policies as well. So let's say that I want to bring in a project into one of my repositories. So I have an internal repository that I've potentially scanned with the Debricked software composition analysis. And then I want to choose it to say that I want to report TensorFlow into repository 1. Then we can see here that if I select repository 1 here, it will use this rule set of Debricked policy and automation rules. And here we then get a checkpoint saying that according to my internal policy, I'm allowed to use TensorFlow in repository 1. That's great. But if I search, for example, for Shardnet, which is another Python library that's quite popular, we can see that I'm not allowed to use it. It will actually fail in my CI pipeline if I try to use this and we use Debricked scanning for license and compliance, because this library has an LGPL license, and for some reason my policy does not allow me to use LGPL licenses in repository 1. And this is quite neat because we can configure this. So if I go into automations here, we can set up these automation rules. And here I can create rules that becomes like a unit test and a web around my application, so I can protect it from open source that's not compliant or not optimal. So here we can create rules such as if license is one of GPL 3 only, or if I have, we can also look at things such as vulnerabilities. So if I have a vulnerability with a CVS score of at least high, then we fail the pipeline and send an email. And this will work both in the Debricked CI when we scan with the Debricked SCA, but also in this start left policies that I just showed you. And the point of this is to make it as easy as possible for developers to choose the right projects and start left from the beginning, and not needing to kind of figure out as they program along, like, oh, I discovered when I was about to release that I wasn't compliant for with this project for some reason. So this is all good, but the problem is that even with the pretty UI and everything is responsive and good, it may not be that developers actually go here and search for new open source. You typically can go to the package managers or GitHub. And if we decide to go for instance, pip pandas, we end up with the pandas project on PyPy, which is the Python package manager. We actually have a browser plugin. So here this little icon will light up, and here you can see the open source health scores here as well, and you get a direct link to Open Source Select pandas, and can get more information about the project here. And this works for GitHub as well. So if I were to go into, for instance, GitHub Debricked CLI, which is our own open source project here, we can see that we can get scores here as well. So, and it's a very small project, so of course the scores are not perfect yet. So furthermore, developers can decide to compare different projects. So let's say I wanted to compare Flask, and so I can press this little compare icon here, and Fast API, which is another popular web framework for Python developers. And then I can go into this comparison view here, and there we can see that we have these two projects here where we can make these comparisons. So we can see that Fast API has a bit better developer longevity, but otherwise they're quite similar. But if we go on to popularity, we can see that Flask, which is the giant in the community, is still more popular than Fast API, and this showing the amount of downloads over time. Flask is still the more used one. But we can see on developer popularity here, Flask is very popular, but Fast API has actually surpassed Flask. And this just happened a few months ago, where now Fast API has more stars and is trending more upwards than Flask. And my preferred framework is Fast API, of course. So thanks for listening in, please reach out to me if you have any questions about Open Source Select and how it works. You will be able to sell this separately, but please contact Virginia or Debricked Sales for more information.